All right, we're back for the final step of the slipcase, which is to cover and make all of the little finishing touches, the finishing cuts that we need to make. So I went ahead and put my books in just to test and make sure that it was large enough. And they seem to fit fine, and there's plenty of wiggle room. So when I put the cloth in there and covering, it's going to be okay. So as far as your piece of book cloth, you do want to make sure that the grain direction of the cloth is running this way. Okay, so that your cloth needs to be wider than it is tall, but the grain needs to be running along the short measurement. So this is the grain direction of this cloth. This is the inside of the cloth. The outside is this grayish green color. And you can use whatever color, of course, that you want to use. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to glue onto the box, and we're going to just wrap this. And you just want to make sure that you have enough excess to cover the width, head and tail. Okay, so we have, this is about 9 by 13 or 9 by 14 or whatever. That handout, what did it say? Let's just grab that real quick. 9 by 13 is the size that I suggest for covering this particular box. But if you make something later where you have a different size, you just want it to have enough excess to cover the width. And then we're going to make a whole lot of trims and things to make it fit. Okay, so we're going to open up the glue, and we're actually going to put glue on the box. And some people would suggest you need to glue the cloth so that it stretches. And that's probably true for most things. If you're additioning a fine binding, or you're additioning some artist book or something, I would probably do that. Oh, I just remembered I was going to show you guys sanding. All right, well, let me glue this one side on, and then I will show you the sanding step. So that I did this, I see the little edges where I had some edges sticking out. And what I'm going to do is just kind of put glue in those places where they're sticking out, because I really feel like in the end, it's all going to even out and be fine. But I wanted to show you that step because it is a kind of an opportunity to get a nicer finish. Like right there, I really needed to sand, but so I'm going to show you that. But let me go ahead and glue this down. So I want to make sure that the open mouth of the box is facing out. Okay, so I glued all that, and now I'm going to lay it on. And really, like, we're going to do a lot of trimming and things like that. So I'm not going to worry too much about it being even or anything right now. I just want to make sure I have enough, and I have plenty. So I'm going to put that down, but let me go grab my sanding block, and then I'm going to show you that step. So I'm going to pause and come right back with that sanding material. Okay, this is my sanding block, and this is just a piece of sandpaper wrapped around a piece of wood. It's just taped on there. And, you know, it'd be better if this was not already glued on. But what you can do is anywhere you have a little edge that's sort of sticking out, it's good to have a piece of block or something. And you could even just wrap it around a piece of wood. That way you have something flat to sand against. So again, don't do what I'm doing. Do as I say, not as I do, as they say, because you don't want to have the cloth on here while you're doing this, because you're going to have a lot of powder, and it's just going to make a mess. So please, if you're going to do this, and I do think it's a nice thing, you can really get the smoothed edges, and it'll look better if you just have a couple of little areas that you can flatten. But I also don't think it's something to be aching over. If you don't want to do this, if you don't want to be that picky, you don't have to. But I do like to show people, because you can fix, if something's sticking out, you can always, you know, kind of come in and just kind of sand it down. So I wanted to show you that step, and I would have been better if I had done it earlier. But I just wanted to give you a sense of that. Okay, so let me quickly go and use my bone folder to gently bone fold that cloth down that I had already glued down. And because the box is dry, I feel a little bit better about, you know, putting a little bit of pressure. That's the whole reason for letting it dry completely before you cover, is because if you're trying to glue this, or you're trying to bone fold and push against the structure, it could fall apart, and we don't want that. So now, okay, I've glued the one side, and now I'm gluing the spine. Just making sure I've got glue all over. And then I'm gonna kind of hold the box and pull it, and then roll the spine down onto the back. I'm just kind of pushing against the surface there, and then I'll bone fold. And I'm not spending a whole lot of time bone folding right now. I just use my finger to find the edge, make sure I've got a sharp edge at the corners. And then I'm going to glue this last face here. If I get a little glue on the cloth, it doesn't matter, you know, because it's all going to get glued down. Just glue that out completely, and you can see I'm just kind of pouncing it in. And this glue again is sort of sticky, so if yours is runny, you don't want it dripping down the sides. You just want it to coat the surface here. Okay. And then push it down on the other side. And just going to flip it over and then come over with my bone folder and just, I mean, I'm not pushing hard, don't get me wrong. And actually, I'll sometimes put my hand inside so that my fingers are kind of holding it and give it some support while I'm pressing with the bone folder, finding the edges like this. Okay. All right. So now you can see the box is in there, and now I've got to start making these little trims. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut this foredge, and I am going to measure. I'll use my ruler, even though I've got a long ruler. I kind of want a little shorter one. See if I can find one quick. Yeah. Oh, that's an 18-inch, and it's just too big, so I'm going to change. I'm going to cut a little 1/2-inch strip. And I'm actually, because my ruler doesn't go all the way to the edge, I'm actually going to do a little more than a 1/2 inch. I'm going to go to the 1/2-inch tick mark here and here, top and bottom. And then I'll flip it and do the other side. So I have to flip back because I have a lot of excess here, more than I realized. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. And then I'm just going to trim that. And it's going to be a little bit tricky to see. Maybe I can hold that. So I'm going to use, a lot of times I'll flip my ruler over so that I can see better, but I'll just do it with the cork side down. Okay, so I lined up those two marks, and then I'll take my X-Acto and just trim. And then do the other side. You can see what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll put my knife into the first mark, especially when there's a glare, and then find the other one and then cut. I guess my blade's a little bit dull because every time I'm starting a cut, it's pulling my material. I had a fresh blade, but sometimes they are fresh, but they don't last long. Okay, so I cut those 4 edges so that they're even. And now what I want to do is in the back right here, I want to cut from the corner straight out and from the corner straight out. So I'm going to be making cuts here on this side. I'm looking at the camera doing this and straight out like that, because you're not going to be able to see maybe what I'm doing. Let's see if that'll fit. It doesn't really fit. I need something a little narrower. A lot of times, I'll tell you, sometimes I just kind of eyeball it. I don't really use a tool, which is what I think I'm going to do right now, because we're going to cut this off. Let me see if I can sort of get it in there at an angle. I just want to be flush, and then I'm going to cut straight out. And once I've released one side, then I can do the other side because the ruler is wider than the box, which is probably going to be the case most of the time. So I'm just lining it up at the corner, and then I just want to cut as much as possible straight out like that. So I'm making like a flap like that. And then I'm going to do it on the other end too. And then just straight out from the edge. And then straight out from the other edge. Okay, like that. All right, so there's the 4 edges cut. Now I've cut these flaps in the back. And now what I need to do is I'm going to trim those smaller. So they really only need to be about 1/4 inch because they're just going to cover the back edge of the slipcase. So I'm just going to do this by hand, 1/4 inch away. And then at the same time, I'm going to miter those corners, just a little snip with the X-Acto. You can see that, the mitering there. And then on the other end, everything that you do, you're going to do twice because there's 2 sides. And then straight. See, that cut fine. I don't know what the deal is with that. Miter and snip. So all these little scraps can just go away. And now, so I've got to cut the covering of the top and the bottom of the box. Okay, so I'm going to just cut and I'm going to just fold this to make my marks. So I just took one of these flaps. Right now, this is all I'm doing is just cutting. I'm going to cut this strip. So I'm going to just take and I'm going to fold it at the width. And I'm actually pulled back just a tiny bit from the edge there. Folding that. And then sometimes I will just take my pencil and make a little pencil mark. Sometimes it's good enough to just follow the fold. And then other times I feel like I can't see it well enough or whatever. So I'll make pencil marks where I'm going to cut. So I'm going to do that on the first one. And then I'm going to do it on this side as well. Same thing. I often do it this way. If I were doing an addition, I would make a little jig out of cardboard, out of a piece of board, so that I could. I'm just transferring the pencil just in case I lose it. I would make a jig that's this width and just use it to make my whole addition. Because if I were cutting 30 of these or whatever it is, I wouldn't. It would just take too long to do it this way. But for one box, I'm just going to do it this way. Same thing on the other end. So I just fold. I think I'll just do them both. Right, I'll make the tick marks on both. I'm going to make tick marks just because I'm afraid that fold will there's a little bit of texture in the cloth and it's, I don't want to get confused by that. So just make a fold and then transfer tick marks as well, just so I can cut. So I just did both sides. I marked both sides and then I can cut both sides. So for each step, I'm sure you guys have your ways of watching these videos, but I would watch that and then go do it and then come back and watch the next step. Because I don't know how you'd follow along the first time through doing something. Just have to pause it and do it and then come back. Okay, so now I've got most of the primary cuts done. This is the front, this is the top and bottom, and this the back, like that. So now what we've got to do is we're going to notch one of these flaps, because what we're going to do is we're going to fold them both down, but we don't want a double thickness of cloth at the foredge here to turn in. So we want one on the top and one on the bottom, and we're going to notch out a little L shape right here on one of these. So I'm just looking at how they look. This needs to be cleaned up, and I'll clean that up in just a second, but I'm going to go ahead. They really look the same. And so I think, I don't know why, but I'm going to notch this one. So I just want to come straight out. So I'm going to lay my ruler on top and I'm going to come out straight from, I could peel this back. This is the foredge of the box and I'm just coming straight out there, lining up across the top and then straight up from that corner. Just cut that. And all that's going to do is just allow me to fold this one down first and then fold that one down second and make my little turn in at the foredge with one thickness of cloth. And so what I like to do, and this is not an imperative thing once again, but sometimes I will, if I did one on this side, I'm going to do the other one down here on that side, just so they are in different directions. I don't know. Sometimes I do things and I don't remember why someone told me to do that, or if I just decided that that's how I want it to be or what. So I can't give you a good explanation as to why I do it that way, but that's what I'm doing. But you could just as easily do them on the same side. I don't know. Maybe it's better to do that. I don't know. Okay. So let's see, what else do I have to do? I need to do a little notch right here at the foredge. I'm going to cut like a little, I'm going to draw it first. It's like a little L shape. That is the width of the board and then out like this. Okay. So right here, I'm going to cut that away, but you can see how it's almost like the little square of the foredge I'm leaving uncut. And this is so finicky, but this is just the way that you have to do this. So you're going to cut a little L there. And then you're going to do it on the other side as well. So a little L shape. And I'm drawing it just so you can see before I actually cut, because you won't be able to see the cutting with my hand in the way. So I'm going to now, you can see I'm going to cut that out. So it's like straight out and straight over, just a little tick, like a little tiny notch. And it seems so finicky, and it is. Oops. But yeah, this is when I'm going to turn this in, it's going to look right. And then here, I need to do it as well, where there's more material. It's almost like a little, just a strip that I'm going to cut out. So I cut, and then I cut a little notch that is the width. So I started doing it. I should have drawn it first. It's just like a little, it's the same shape, but you have to cut it out of the material like that. You can see that shape. And then I'll do it over here. Here it's like you're cutting out just this little, the width of the board, but away so that there's enough material to cover it. So that's what you're going to cut there too. So these are the little turn-ins that we're doing. And this one. Okay, so there's all our little cuts for that part. And now we can start gluing stuff down. So we cut those notches, and then there's a little bit more that we've got to do. But the first thing we're going to do is glue this little back flap, that little 1/4 inch flap, the first kind of flap that we cut. And all I'm doing is gluing that and then folding it in. And that's just covering the back corner of the spine. And as always, I just kind of wipe the glue off my hands because I don't want to get glue all over my box. And so that's why I take a second and wipe the glue off my fingers. Because like I said, if you get that dried, rolled up glue on there, that comes off. But wet glue does not, it will leave a mark. It'll leave a stain. You can even see glue on my mat here like that, where I, it's wet glue that dries and it's shiny. Okay, so here's the other one. You just kind of get in the habit of wiping your fingers off. Okay. All right, so now I've got to glue down this first flap. And this, I think I'm going to use a little piece of scrap. I'll just use this printout. I'm going to glue this. And that's going to go down first. And we're almost done here. We've only got maybe 10 more minutes. And we'll be done. So I'm going to, this is the one that's been trimmed, and that's what I'm going to glue down first. And oops, I'm off camera. Sorry, glued down that first flap that we cut, the one that we trimmed short. And now this one's going to get glued down on top, but I'm going to do that in a minute after I do the other side. You don't want to use your printout. You can use newsprint or magazine, just the same as we always do when we need scrap. And, sorry, gluing this down. This is the short one. And I'm just knocking that in to glue it down right there in the back. And then I'm going to glue this. So I only need to glue, I don't need to glue all the way out here. I can glue just like here and back. And be careful with this because you don't want to get it kind of all over the place on the edges of the rest of the box or anything. So just be a little bit careful when you're doing this. And you don't want to get it on the back of the spine because you back here. So just be a little gentle back here. Like that. And I went over a little bit, but that's okay. Big deal. So then fold that down. Using my bone folder to kind of knock it. This is a little bit long right here, so I'm kind of pushing that down right here. And maybe I should have chosen the other one so it wouldn't overhang so much, but I'm just going to try to bone fold it down. I think it'll be okay. And then here, and if you feel like it's going to do that, you could always just like real quick trim that a little shorter, just shave off a little bit more. This is when you need some little thin piece of metal to do it because it's hard to do with a ruler that's wider than what you're cutting in the area. But if you need to trim it, you can just do that. I'm going to do it just because I'm afraid it's going to do it on that side too. So I just shaved off like a little, maybe not even a 16th, like a 32nd of an inch there. Okay. And I'm going to go this side now. Okay. This one's a little bit better because it's shorter, whereas this one, it's not bad, but it's a little bit funky right there. But I feel like I can keep working that down and it'll be okay. That can be the bottom of the box too. All right. So let's see, we got our notches cut already. And now we've got to do these small flaps. So what we're going to do here is very similar. And I'm going to draw it out and then I'll hold it up to the camera. We're going to do a little 95-degree. Let's see. Actually, I want to cut straight out like we did in the back. show you. It's hard to do. You're going to cut like a little 45-degree and then straight out. And I started cutting. I kind of get ahead of myself sometimes. Let me do it on this side. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to notch it like a little 45 and then straight out. And a little 45. Oops, wrong direction. 45 and then straight out. So you can see that. Maybe it's trying to focus on the background too much. These little see if that whoops. I don't know if you guys can see this. The camera's not focusing on it, but there's a little diagonal here, and then a line straight out, and a little diagonal from this corner, and then straight out. That's what you're going to cut. It's like a little tongue that you're going to cut, and you're going to do that on both ends. So it's a little 45, snip, and then straight out. Sometimes you have to put your finger on it because it's kind of floppy. 45 in from the corner and then straight out. Like that. So that's what it's going to look like. You can see that in the end there. And then same thing on the other end. A 45 and then out. Yeah. These are the last pieces that get turned in. And so they're like a little cover for the corner. So 45 and then out. Okay. That was a little bit messy. Sometimes I'll use scissors for that part because you have to kind of snip. But then the last thing you're going to do here is you have everything covered except you got to glue these straight flaps, and then these short flaps are going to be turned in last. And if you look at the example here, you can see those little corners that I just cut. That's what it's going to look like. It kind of is like a little tuck and a little 45-degree at the corner of the front of the box, and that's what you want. So we're going to glue the long side first. Oops, I laid my brush right on the mat. So be careful with your glue because you don't want to get a whole bunch of glue on the inside of the box there because it'll be messy. So just glue that flap, and then you're going to fold that in like this. And don't fold it down. And then the other flap alongside. Like that. Same thing, and you're going to turn that in, and you're going to bone fold it. And then I'm going to show you, you can do this at the same time. So I lay the box down and then bone fold inside to make sure that those glued flaps lay down flat. And then flip the box over and do that on the inside as well. And then the very last thing is these little tongue flaps that we made. And then, so I just usually don't even really dip into the glue again because you just don't want to make a gluey mess out of either one of these. So I'm just going to glue that one, go ahead and glue the other side, and then I'll turn them both in. So I'm just pouncing the glue, and then I'm going to turn that in. And so there's my little 45. And because there's two layers of corner cover, so there's that little square cover and there's this little 45. You get like a little thickness there, which I usually just tap down. And then same thing up here. And I have a little bit of stray threads where I kind of pulled it with the scissors. So then like that, and you should be done. That's it. So just make sure everything's bone folded down. You can kind of keep working on it. If there's any little bubblies or, bulges, you can keep doing that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the books in just so you can see, but you want to wait. I would wait till it's completely dry. So they go in like that. And there's your slipcase for your for your pamphlets. And I'm going to take them out to let it dry completely, but that's your slipcase. And you can make it for anything. You can make it any size. You just have to measure whatever it is that you want to enclose, and then you can cut your pieces, cover them, and you're ready to go. All right. So there's your slipcase. All right. Thanks. Bye.